One of my favorite mass Vanguard styles has to be the Dwarfs, and when Big Papa posted this replay on the Tournament Hub Discord, I saw it was entitled I Hate Elves, and saw the build and decided I absolutely needed to have a look. We've got a front line of miners with blasting charges, second line of, looks like Bugman's Rangers, the Ulthuar's Raiders going to be mixed in here as well, so all the Vanguard stuff, and then to follow them up, some Slayers, Wars of Dragonfire Pass, couple of Master Engineers, and Thoric Ironbrow not on his anvil. He is on foot this time. Against the Wood Elves, who are going to be switching sides with the Dwarfs and playing defensively this time around. They've got a whole bunch of Eternal Guards with shields. Wildwood Rangers here, a Spellweaver of Life with, I would imagine, Dwellers and Earthblood. It looks like a bunch of Starfire Shafts. And then way in the corner here, probably expecting to find some artillery, but there is none. We've got a couple of Wild Riders. Let's get things started as the Dwarfs start to get into range here, obviously with no shields. Miners will be pretty decent targets for the Starfire Shafts, but at the same time, they are pretty cheap, so it's not super efficient. As long as the miners are able to get into range with most of their unit models still intact and throw a good amount of their charges, like these guys, a lot of HP damage, still 94 unit models there, though. Like there, those guys got off most of their blasting charges, 88 out of 100, so that's still, what, 80% of their blasting charges, even though they've lost a lot more of that in terms of HP. It can still deal some effective damage and get pretty close to paying for themselves. A couple of these Eternal Guards just getting absolutely wrecked straight up. Haven't got any beautiful cinematic shots, but there you go. Got the gleaming, glittering Starfire Shafts raining overhead and the blazing blasting charges booming elf brains all over the battlefield. And also here, these Bugman Rangers pouring in some very cost-effective fire to the Wildwoods. In general, Bugmans are an excellent unit for trading against other ranged units. They've got shields and replenishment here. 0.1% HP per second is actually pretty substantial for a passive healing effect. That combined with their missile block chance should make them trade well. The Rangers with great weapons, obviously, Ulthuar's Raiders, Regiment of Renown, do not have a missile block chance. They are going to take significant damage there. Also see Dwellers below opened up to help slow the advance of the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, do a bit of damage on the approach as well. But right now, this sort of concave of Bugman's Rangers is standing firm. The Slayers also set up in a defensive position, and the Engineers are going to start picking off, well, one of them at least, going to pick off some models from those Wild Riders. It looks like they might be also refilling the blasting charges with that restock ability. I'm not really sure. Looks like they didn't even take restock, actually. Very good use for it, potentially for miners, given that they have relatively limited ammunition. But looks like we're going to have a little bit of flash bomb there from that miner. Those Slayers should be able to close the distance. The Bugman's Rangers also could turn around and just brace. Another flash bomb there on the other Wild Rider. But Bugman's Rangers, of course, do have charge defense against large, as well as 38 melee defense, 55 armor with Thoric's buff. What is that? Little passive armor buff? I forget. Yeah, anyway. I've also got the Norgamling's Ironbreakers. Didn't even see them before. They're in here on the Vanguard as well. One of the strongest Vanguard units in the game. But let's get in close and watch as the Dwarves kind of grind in melee for a while. The Bugman's Rangers coming a little bit far forward with their Ulthuar's Raiders counterparts. And unfortunately going to get tangled up in melee. They're not going to take much damage from the Eternal Guards, but still they need to be away if they're going to be taking advantage of that ranged attack. Here, the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass able to get in on those Wild Riders, and I would imagine that Ironbreakers, once they can start throwing their charges, or if they were able to get a shoot order onto those Wildwood Rangers, they could blast that unit that's sort of forming up into a nice little blob for them right now. But the Dwarfs are being forced into a little bit of a choke. This camp, other than the tower in the center, is not impassable terrain. This rock is impassable terrain, though, and so Dwarfs kind of being forced into the hot gates a little bit against all of this Wood Elf infantry. That is going to allow these Starfire Shafts a lot of time to fire in. But are the Dwarf shields actually mattering? Let's check the value here. This Starfire Shaft's pretty close to paying for itself. This one pretty much already has paid for itself. All of these Starfire Shafts, yeah, other than, well, pretty much all of them have been quite cost-effective. But on the flip side, Bugman's Rangers likewise also have probably all pretty much paid for themselves, and they also have the HP and plenty of ammunition left to continue to sustain through this fight. Notice that the Wood Elves are starting to run a little bit low on ammunition, and the Norgerling's Ironbreakers finally unleashing a devastating volley of charges into those Wilder Rangers there, just blasting the entire unit to smithereens. And very good stuff. Meanwhile, another flash bomb there on those Wild Riders. Double Engineer is something that I haven't seen too much of in Warhammer 3, but it definitely is a solid way to play. And the Hawk-8 sort of working against the Elves in a sense here, as their superior numbers of infantry aren't really able to outflank. The Wood Elf player also kind of over-blobbing a little bit here. You want to peel off a couple of these Eternal Guards and spread out, go attack some of these other targets, because right now they are just waiting for some more charges, and the crossbows also to fire in, but another Dweller's going to be unleashed, try and finish off those Norgerling's Ironbreakers, prevent them from throwing their charges to that nice, juicy blob. The Spellweaver also just trundling around, kind of floating about. The Engineers are going to start to focus on her. Honestly, the Engineers probably could have focused her a little bit earlier on. Finally, some blasting charges do go off, though, as these Bugmans hold the line. They can act as a line infantry in a pinch. Let's see, how many unit models do they still have alive? 53, so more than half their unit models still alive, despite all that HP damage taken. And that healing is definitely ticking up quite nice. Looks like about, what, 6 heals per second? Not too bad there. Wow, the Spellweaver takes more volleys. Oh man, that shot actually knocks her over. That rifle that the Master Engineers got has quite a bit of power, it must be said. Thoric's also pushing forward, though, supporting these miners, trying to mop up some of these Starfire shafts, not allow them to just sit and shoot. The Starfire's focusing Thoric. He's got Master Rune of Negation up right now, but even without that, I mean, he has pretty good missile resistance. I guess only 15%. Does have fire resistance, though. A lot of people might not realize this, but he does get fire resistance from his armor there. Obviously applies to Starfire shafts, but anyway, Dwarfs end up cleaning up the win there, and a very fun build nonetheless. I love to see Dwarfs kind of rush in with the Vanguard. And it's sort of a ranged rush attack in a way. You get up close and then you throw charges and you shoot crossbows and you just blast your opponent at point blank range. Works out fairly well here. You can do a couple of different things with this. Try and support with like gyros or various things, but the Master Engineers, despite the fact they didn't pay for themselves, the smoke bombs and whatnot were still quite useful. Norgerling's Ironbreaker, such an awesome unit, able to tank out some damage and dish out some damage at the same time. Slayers in the backline, cleaning up Wild Riders, did a great job. Bugmans, love this unit in this matchup. I think it's a super underrated unit in general. And you do see them a bit in domination here and there, but this is probably one of their best matchups in land battles, if not the best matchup for them. Yeah, Ulthar's Raiders also managed to get some pretty good value despite being focused pretty aggressively. And then some of these miners, over 400 value, almost, over 500 in one case, is very, very nice. Wood Elves side here, Wild Riders, a little bit under what you would want. Wild Riders in general are pretty bad right now, way overcosted in my opinion. So you probably would just want to take Glade Riders in their place here. Just take like 4 Glade Riders instead. Gives you a little bit more volume as well. Try and circumvent those restrictions, you know, the smoke bombs and defensive units, or flash bombs rather. Wildwood Rangers also are a decent unit in this matchup if they can get in melee without taking ranged damage, but they are extremely vulnerable to taking ranged damage. Hard to say. Maybe just going with, honestly, I mean, hindsight 2020, but a dragon against this dwarf would be pretty hilarious. Yeah, I mean, dragons are probably relatively risky here due to cannons and other ranged units, but still, it'd be interesting to see. Maybe cut all this elite stuff, take like a dragon and some more cavalry. Not really sure. You guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below, but definitely an interesting one. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.